Almost 2 years ago, I made a video called 10 Big Classics I Want to Read. I made this video because I wanted to orient myself in the landscape of classics and sort of figure out which ones I should prioritize. And then the thought was that when I'd read all of these books, I would make a video explaining what I thought of them and sort of comparing what I used to think about them and what I actually think about them. And a couple of weeks ago, I started thinking about this concept of reading these books again. But at this time I'd forgotten which books I had on the list initially, so I had to go through the pain of watching myself 2 years ago, making that video. And I realized that I will probably never read those books, not all of them. So that's what this video is about, explaining what I think about these books now, 2 years afterwards. We'll start with the first one, and that is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. So earlier this year I actually read Anna Karenina. The reason why I read that one instead was that many of you suggested that I should start with it because it's more easygoing, lot less names, and that is still why I haven't read War and Peace. It's said that the first third of it is just name dropping and quote-unquote world building, and that could be interesting, but I feel like I have to be in a really good place to start that book. So I really don't know. I did like the language in Anna Karenina and it wasn't as dull as I feared, so might be a good sign for War and Peace, but I still haven't started it. Just in general, still a massive piece of literature. I think it's about 1400 pages or so, so I have to be in a good place, as I said. So that was the first novel, and of course Tolstoy is maybe one of the biggest names in classic literature, and no surprise that I had him on the list. So that was the first piece of literature on this list, and 2 years ago I was in a place where I wanted to discover all of classic literature. I'm now beginning to narrow it down a bit, and that feels great. And sort of this video is about that, finding out or getting to know yourself as a reader, or getting to know myself. Anyway, book number 2 was Ulysses by James Joyce. This is probably one of those books I've talked most about on this channel without actually reading, because this is just what I picture to be the most difficult read I have in my shelf. And this didn't occur to me when I made my last video about it, but after all comments have been pushed into my comment section, I'm beginning to understand that this really isn't the book for me. Basically because it's supposed to be too complicated. But that being said, I have been wondering about listening to this on audiobook, sort of just pushing the message into my head, and if I'd done that one time, maybe I could read it a second time at some point, having a bit of knowledge about it already. I don't know if that makes sense to any of you. This is still one of those that I really want to read, but it's still just terrifying. I could start with one of his other books, but I don't think that makes any sense. It would just be me suffering through 2 books instead of 1, because eventually I want to read it. So I'm sure at this point 50% of you are now thinking, what an idiot having that book in your shelf, even though you don't really want to read it. And half of you are like thinking, you should read it. It's really important and it's a fantastic novel. At least that's my impression from the comment section. Number 3 on this list have actually been read, and that is George Eliot and Middlemarch. So these ones I read last year, I think, and I really enjoyed aspects of it. It was felt sort of fairy tale-like. Sometimes when you read old literature, it's just so unreal that it's like a Disney movie only with deaths and horrible things happening, or even more horrible things happening, and misery, a lot of misery, and this is no exception. But I did enjoy the language a lot. This was not a boring read either, and it felt more fast-paced than the pages would suggest. So really happy I read this, and this one feels sort of like one of those that not everyone else has read, so it makes me feel special. Number 4 on this list is The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo. This is still one of those books that I really want to read, and this is probably my fault because I haven't ordered it yet, mainly because it's difficult to make up my mind of which edition I want. And then when I'm in the mood for it, I go to a bookstore and try to find it, but it's not there. So that's why I haven't read it yet. Thinking about it now, I could pick it up on Kindle, and probably that's a really good idea that I haven't thought about. I will check that out later after I make this video. If I don't remember it after making this video, please comment it in the comment section so I will remember. Thank you. But this one I probably want to read even more than I did before. This has to do with the movie versus book aspect. So I watched the Disney version and that's pretty horrible at times, but the book is supposed to be really, really terrible or horrible. And I've thought about this before, that I don't want to read books where I've watched the movie earlier, but since I watched A Man Called Ove on movie and then read the book and enjoyed both, it makes me even more interested in reading this one. I'm also interested in reading Victor Hugo's second masterpiece, Les Miserables, but that's a big one, so we'll see. Let's continue with the blame game, because the next book on this list was The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. So this one I haven't... So I've read the abridged version, but I haven't read the full one. So the reason is that I haven't yet found an edition I truly loved, and so I've been postponing it. So hasn't happened. Will probably take a while until I do. The Count of Monte Cristo, the abridged version at least, is one of my favorite books. It's extraordinarily indulging, interesting, exciting. All of those things that you wouldn't think you'd get out of a classic. So that's why I want to read the full version. When I read this one, I didn't know it was abridged, so that's a pity. But one day I'll find the right edition. It will stand in the shelf screaming my name, and we'll wander off together and we'll read each other. Yeah. Book number 5. I realize now that this whole video is about me blaming you guys for my shortcomings. I hope you're okay with it, because the next one is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens in this beautiful, beautiful edition. It's even more beautiful on the inside. It's a part of this classic series in Norway. You can sort of have you can get them in the mail like once a month, I think, or could. I don't know if it's a thing still. But I keep on collecting these editions at thrift stores. It's soon about time that I read some Charles Dickens, and the reason I haven't is that each time I mention him on my channel, someone comments that it could be a bit complex, so I'm starting to think that I should start with like A Christmas Tale. Is that the name? His Christmas book, or something light so I could ease into it. So that's why I haven't started. I love the title Great Expectations. I really don't know why. A Tale of Two Cities I also have standing in my shelf, and in addition to Hard Times. So something Dickens will be read. I don't know if I can say soon, but I hope it's quite soon. But I don't know if it will be Great Expectations. It seems a bit tough. At least that's what you're telling me. The next one I talked about was The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. It's a difficult name. That one, I think I'd written it down because I visited Canterbury, and Canterbury Tales seems like a fun and extraordinary piece of literature. It's also really, really, really old. I don't know about this one now. I don't think it has been translated to Norwegian, and reading it in English, I really don't know. Books that are that old might be a bit too complicated, but we'll see. This is one of those that I haven't looked into after I talked about it in the first video, so nothing has really happened here. It's still there, will probably never be read by me, I think. It's also kind of fun thinking about these novels now. Sometimes I read bigger books, but it feels like a bit of a task sometimes. So when I first pick up a chunky one, it's easy going for something else than a classic, because then you know that it won't be as fast paced that me especially want it to be. So number 8 is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. So this is one of those that when I talk about it, it gets a lot of positive attention. and it doesn't seem like the book that is most slow-paced, so that's a huge plus. Don't really know anything about it. I usually don't want to know anything about books before I read them. Sometimes it might be a good idea, and I've realized now lately that when reading some classics, it might be a thing that you could check up on why it's a classic whilst you read it. I've done so lately, and that really helped me like the book. So it's not cheating, but it's sort of just filling in the blanks, I guess. So I will probably continue doing so while I read some classics. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get really excited for the significance of literature or art in general. So when I look at the picture or a painting, I could think like it's an alright painting, but if I know why it's important, it'll grow on me. That feels like cheating, but it's still a thing I do. So I will do that with these ones as well. For those of you that are now awake, you realize that we've now come to book number 9. And a funny thing is that in my video 10 big classics, it's only 9 books. And then last one is Faust by Goethe. And I don't really know anything about this. It has a very intriguing cover. It's maybe the biggest German classic, or at least that's how I view it. And just an intense guy on the cover. I think that's why it's on the list, and like for the significance of it. The thing I remember regarding this one from the video was that one person commented, this is not 500 pages, because that was one of the things where all the books should be 500 pages or more. And this one person wanted to comment that, well, this isn't 500 pages. And yeah, I don't know. People are strange. Haven't thought about that book since last time I made that video, and I don't think I will buy it anytime soon. I have too many classics standing in my shelf already, and I don't read that many classics. This was sort of me talking about the books I thought I'd read 2 years ago, but sort of haven't. And it's a complex situation, but this is where we're at least. If you have suggestions for fast-paced classics I should read, please comment them below. Comment anything below if you want to. I hope you have a terrific day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!